Good afternoon. I'm Lieutenant Crystal Hong. I'm a Naval Intelligence Officer in Defense Analysis, Special Ops Low Intensity Conflict curriculum. As one of the students, as part of the student body, I would like to give a warm welcome to our guest, Adobe CEO, Mr. Shantanu Narayen. Please give him a round of applause. On behalf of Admiral Rondeau and the Naval Postgraduate School, we would like to thank you for taking the time to share your insights for innovation, leadership, and your business perspectives for the future military leaders of tomorrow. My pleasure. Please join me on the chair.
Thank you.
So, sir, as the moderator of today, it is my job to ensure that this discussion stays on time, so please don't fire me when I cut you off. Everyone in the crowd, audience, please silence your phones, and if you don't know how to do so, please locate the nearest 8-year-old. But please hold all your questions till the end, as I'm the only one allowed to ask questions right now. Sir, for the first question I have for you, I'll begin with a table setter just to warm up the crowd. Adobe is a leader and well-known name in the tech and business world. Adobe was founded over 35 years ago and has more than 22,000 global employees, operates in over 100 countries, and is at the Fortune 500, more than $10 billion in annual revenue. However, most people know the Adobe products of Acrobat and Photoshop, but your business is much broader than that. Mr. Narayen, could you give us a brief overview of Adobe's business today and the markets you serve?
I'd be happy to, Lieutenant Hong. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you so much, Admiral Rondeau. And it is absolutely a pleasure and an honor to be here. Thank you all for the service. My only connection with water, if I may say it that way, is that growing up in India, I used to sail a lot. And I actually sailed competitively for India, but that was a long time ago in a small boat. I'm now terrified of water, so I'm actually even more grateful for all that you do for our country. And it really is a pleasure to be here. You're right. Most people still know Adobe for Photoshop and PDF. The company was founded 35 years ago when Chuck Geschke and John Warnock, who were two researchers at Xerox PARC and were finishing their PhD, came up with this idea to print, something that we take for granted, but their fundamental innovation was being able to take what you could see on a computer screen and print it out. It shows how far we've come in technology. People don't print anything anymore. But that sort of led to a whole bunch of other applications like Illustrator, applications like PageMaker and Photoshop. And, we take a lot of immense pride in the fact that there isn't a piece of written communication that probably wasn't touched by a piece of Adobe software. So whether it's the packaging on this bottle of water, whether it's the newspaper or magazine that you're looking at, whether it's a website that has video, whether it's a mobile applications, chances are that there's some piece of Adobe software that was used in it. But 10 years ago, we came to the realization that our revenue and our growth was actually slowing. And this was just after the recession of 2009. And so we embarked on a different strategy, which was to completely move all of our software to the cloud and also start to serve customers. So what we talk about right now is that we have two real growth imperatives for the company. We like to empower people to create, and that's all about whatever piece of content you want to create on whatever device and wherever people want to consume it. Adobe wants to play a role in creating that piece of content, and we all know that the amount of content that's being created has completely exploded. On the other side, every one of us engages with every company right now digitally. And so whether you're making a travel booking, whether you're ordering something to eat, whether you're visiting another country, all of that digital engagement, Adobe is also now in the business of helping businesses transform and engage digitally with customers. Both of these have been pretty high growth initiatives. And I think what's common across both of them is the fact that we're in the content business. So creating content, managing content, measuring content, monetizing content, and mobilizing content, Adobe wants to play a role in making that entire workflow happen.
Excellent. Thank you, Mr. Narayen, for enlightening us on just how diverse Adobe is. For a little background information for our audience, in 2019, Forbes magazine named you number 7 in top innovative leaders in the world. And in 2018, the Economic Times of India named you the Global Indian of the Year. Adobe's annual growth rate currently stands at about 23.6%, definitely more than Jeff Bezos' Amazon baby. Early in your career, you began at Apple, director role at Silicon Graphics, and co-founded Pictra, incredibly innovative in launching the concept of digital photo sharing. And during your 20-plus tenure with Adobe, you've held the leadership positions of Senior Vice President, Chief Operating Officer, and Chief Executive Officer. Now, in 2011, then President Mr. Barack Obama appointed you as the member of the Management Advisory Board. And you quoted, the world is moving to the cloud. Now, you've had such an amazing road to success, and it makes me think, what am I doing in my life, right? Now that we've set the stage, let's dive into a couple more questions. Mr. Narayen, this is a several-part question, so please bear with me and please don't fire me. What are your habits for success as you labored up the executive ranks at various companies? What key habits would you recommend one strive to possess in order to achieve success such as yours? And lastly, what characteristics do you look for in your leaders for tomorrow?
Well, there are many questions in there, so let me try and parse it. But first, let me acknowledge that, in terms of the accolades that one receives, there's no question whatsoever that the accolades are really deserving of a team. And what better audience than this team to really understand that? I mean, at Adobe, we have over 20,000 dedicated employees, and they are really motivated every day to try and continue to innovate on behalf of our customers. I think in terms of my own journey, I was very fortunate. My father actually studied in the United States before going back to India to start his own business. And he studied electrical engineering at Urbana-Champaign. And my mother was a professor of American literature. And so I think what was distilled in me at a very, very young age was intellectual curiosity. And that is something that I think has served me well, and especially when you're in the technology business. I think if you have this insatiable desire to learn and understand that there's so much out there in terms of what technology could bring. And so I'm intellectually curious, and I ask questions, and I think that enables me to both understand, but over time, hopefully hone in on what's really important. I think in terms of what we look for in the company, this is something that we're fortunate that Adobe is always ranked one of the better places to work, but we think that if you resonate with the mission of the company, our company mission, we talk about changing the world through digital experiences. If you're in Silicon Valley, you have to say you're changing the world through something, otherwise it doesn't seem aspirational enough. So we talk about changing the world through digital experiences, and we love the fact that when employees come into work, given the fact that they spend more time at work than they probably do with their families and loved ones, that they resonate with the mission, and then the values of the company. We took a lot of time to articulate the values of our company, whether it's innovative in terms of trying to innovate on behalf of our customers. We talk about exceptional in terms of the kind of software that we hope to deliver. We talked about involved in the communities in which we all participate, because we think we have a moral obligation to help the communities in which Adobe is. And we talk about genuine, which is, again, what the founders did for the company. And so I think, people do their best work when they resonate with the mission of the company and when they resonate with the values of, what the company stands for. If you have a impedance mismatch with either the mission or the values, we don't think you do your best work. But I've been fortunate. I love building products. I love building software. And so, it turns out I was in the right place at the right time.
Yes, excellent. I completely agree. Intellectual curiosity is definitely where I got to where I am today as well. I didn't know I'd end up, building as many PowerPoints as I would be as an Intel officer, but so thank you.
I'd suggest you use PDF. They're even smaller in size.
Yes. So I'd like to move on to the next question, and I believe that is a very important topic to everyone here in the audience, and that is the return of the great power competition. Not Return of the Jedi, different conversation. Military technology is progressing towards automated warfare. Adobe is a strong partner in this arena where your company is outpacing your competitors. We have a saying that all of our classmates here in the audience are too familiar with, and that is death by PowerPoint. So I'm glad you sat earlier because we never say death by PDF. In regard to military applications, what is your vision for the future of Adobe in the next 5 to 10 years? And what are your thoughts on digitalization and automated warfare in the future? Why should we be excited about it and yet scared?
Well, I'm by no means an expert in anything military, but let me talk a little bit about what I think the potential or the enabling aspects of what technology allows us to do. And I think from our perspective, Adobe has always focused on how do we make data more accessible to people? That's been one of our bigger initiatives, and we might touch on this when we talk about artificial intelligence as well and machine learning. But for us, we believe that if we can disseminate information, I mean, that's certainly one of the things. The way Adobe is used, I think, in the military, it does tend to be that all of the important documents are in PDF, and we're trying to understand if we can apply machine learning and heuristics to understand the semantic understanding of what the document is. That is something that hopefully brings to bear when somebody is looking for a piece of information, how they can find this. The other area where Adobe is used a lot, because PDF is a secure format, we have analytics software that allows us to evaluate when data is being looked at and if there's anomalies associated with what the usage of that particular PDF is. But I think the most exciting thing for us right now is in each of the domains that you are in software, really thinking about as a group how artificial intelligence and machine learning can be used to process the data that's important to make those decisions that are so critical in the millisecond. In commercial applications, the way we look at it is we process 200 trillion transactions now on behalf of our customers. So if you're visiting a financial institution like JP Morgan Chase or Wells Fargo, if you're doing commerce at a retail store like Best Buy, chances are there's a piece of Adobe software that was used to create that content, analyze that content. So think about it. A marketer who's trying to market to every one of you at that last nanosecond has to figure out what's the appropriate profile that you have and how can you provide the right information. I think that same applicability in defense and in military is all about how do you harness the power of the information that you have, which is constantly exploding, and put it to good use to whatever you are trying to do. So we are by no means the expert. We focus a lot more on horizontal technology, and we work with partners then in terms of how that could be used for vertical applications, such as the military, such as financial services.
What are your thoughts on, when you said horizontal, what are your thoughts on working with multiple partners in private, public, commercial sector, and when you have to deal with that digitalization and specifically for compatibility issues because you have such a wide variety of audience and customers?
Well, I think what we take a lot of pride on is the fact that Adobe software is probably distributed more than any other software in the world. If you think about PDF, if you think about Flash prior to that, we were on more computers, more mobile devices than virtually any other piece of software in the world. And I think at Adobe we have this fundamental assertion or hypothesis that great ideas come from everywhere. And when you're thinking about technology and trying to build lasting technology companies, it's an oft-used cliche, but everybody thinks about how can we build a platform. And so if you're building a platform on which others can innovate, then you actually reap the benefits not just of the platform that you're building, but the entire ecosystem of partners that are building on top of that. And so PostScript was an open standard from day one, and that's why I think it got established as much as it did for printing. PDF has been an open standard from day one, which is why every single company is building workflow solutions on top of PDF. So the notion of partnership, the notion of great ideas come from everywhere, and if you can harness the power of that, the notion of developers, because the reality today is that anybody with a good idea and a computer can compete with Adobe or can partner with Adobe. So it's a mindset that I think we've tried to take, which is how do you harness the power of the community? Nowhere is this more true than in artificial intelligence. And I'll tell you what I mean by that. Everybody talks about AI. We look at it and say, there are tens of millions of people who use our product every single day. Every single day, there are tens of millions of people who use our product. There are probably hundreds of millions of assets that are being created from our products every single day. If we can understand how every single user is using our products and make it easier to use for that next person when they're using our products, I mean, that would be, I think, a power that only we can harness in. And frankly, it serves as a technology moat against other people who are trying to compete with you. So we think about that a lot, which is how do we partner, but also how do we build platforms on which people can actually amaze you with their ingenuity.
Thank you for that. It's very compelling and very insightful. Now we're going to move on to the next question, Mr. Narayen. At an interview for the Center for Digital Transformation back in April, you spoke on dreaming bigger. You provided an incredibly inspirational discussion. However, we are in the business that deals with classified material, intellectual property on the strategic and geopolitical stage. Could you illustrate for us how you've dealt with these mechanics and risk acceptance and your thoughts on changing the narrative from risk averse to investment? In other words, how do you approach risk taking in leading Adobe and permitting some tolerance for failure?
Well, maybe a story associated with that I've shared. I've been at the company 20 years, and I took over as CEO in 2007. In 2008, we had record revenues, and I'm like, how hard can this be? Even I can do this job. And then the recession hit in 2009, and when the recession hit in 2009, our revenue dropped by 25%. We recognized that we were not innovating at the pace at which we needed to innovate. We had these traditional 12 or 18-month product cycles. And there were small startups in Silicon Valley who would say, old stodgy Adobe, they're not moving fast enough, and they were out there trying to eat our lunch. The cloud had just come, mobile devices had emerged, and it was obvious to us at that point that we were also not attracting new customers to our platform. The existing customer base was very happy with Adobe. We shipped them a box every 12 or 18 months, but that next generation, the millennials, were looking at other alternate pieces of software. And so, what was exciting about that part was when you have your back against the wall, it's almost easier to make change. And we decided that we'd be the first company, literally on the planet to say we're going to completely move our desktop-based software to the cloud. And, I learned something as part of that process, which is, and we use that as one of the strategic lines that we have for the company, which is preserving the status quo in technology is never an option. Because every business in technology has an S-curve. And if you don't recognize that, the S-curve is going to come and the technology that you're working on is going to be obsolete, you're going to be obsolete as a company. But people ask us, when we took the move of saying we're going to completely move to the cloud, we had to again reduce our revenue by 25% and our EPS by 65%, because instead of recognizing revenue up front, we were recognizing revenue ratably. And people ask me that question, which is, how did you take that risk? And, there are a couple of things that I say. The first is, in our role, we're paid to make investments. Some of these investments pay off, and some of these investments don't pay. But you have to get very comfortable with failure. And if you get comfortable with failure, it's amazing. I must confess, I'm more of a cricket fan than I am a baseball fan. But in baseball, you can go to the Hall of Fame batting 300. So 7 times out of 10 you fail, and you go to the Hall of Fame. And why is it that in business, it might be different certainly in the business that you have, but for us, there's this expectation that you're not going to do something that can go wrong. And we got very comfortable at Adobe with the fact that we were going to take these investments. Some of them would pay off. And I think that's really driven the dramatic growth that we've had. We encourage people. I always tell people it's better to ask for forgiveness than ask for permission. And I think that's created a culture of people saying, I'm going to try things. As long as you fail and you change fast, it's okay. Now, I don't want to send the message that we take irresponsible risk. I mean, everything is very carefully thought through, and we understand the implications and ramifications, but it's become a part of the culture, which is technology is going to change, and understanding the environment we're in, understanding the competitive dynamic, I think allows us to move as fast as we need to. So that's how we think about it, which is, let's be thoughtful, but let's not try and just preserve the status quo.
Thank you for that. I absolutely agree, and not preserving the status quo and failing forward. I can definitely tell you in my last 4 or 5 years of being a junior officer, we constantly fail forward, but it's fine because when we put on our lieutenant bars or our captain bars, we move forward and we learn so much from it. So thank you for that answer. My next question for you is Adobe. So Adobe is a pioneer in imaging and video space. Right, with images, photos, Premiere for video. These tools inspire and allow people to be creative. But in recent years, you've been harnessing artificial intelligence to do much more. Analyze vast libraries of images and videos, find patterns in and summarize images more quickly, automating and editing other tasks, some of which might have or do have applications in the military and in the intelligence communities. Can you tell us more about what your company is doing in this specific space?
Sure. First, I think, the potential of technology to do the kinds of things that you can do in imaging, I mean, it's absolutely jaw-dropping in terms of the kinds of things that our product people are working on. I'll give you a couple of examples. It used to be that trying to find an object in a picture, and if you wanted to mask that picture, being able to do it when you had fine strands of hair, it was practically impossible to do it without spending hours. We can now just point to a picture, and the technology enables you to completely understand the semantic understanding of that picture. It allows you to change it. There's this feature that we have called content-aware fill, which allows you to say, take that particular picture and completely eliminate it and blend it into the background. We've now extended that to video, so you can actually do that not just in one image, but you can do that across multiple frames, which is, it really is breathtaking technology. How is this stuff used? The stuff is used very frequently to really understand images. We recognize that unfortunately a lot of the bad guys also use Adobe software. And so one of the things that we've worked and we've partnered with is to express how our file formats are and what is in the file format, so that somebody who's trying to understand where a picture might have come from, how it was posted, and clues that exist. We're more than happy to partner with the defense agencies to say this is how you can actually go back and look at those pictures. The other thing that we can do right now, given the processing power that exists, you can take tens of millions of pictures that have never been tagged. Nobody knows what the color was in it. Nobody knows what the object was in it. And you can apply our algorithms to those images, and then you can do a search. And my team did this. They said, here are 10 million pictures. None of them were tagged with anything. So there was absolutely no metadata associated with it. And they said, go ahead and look for something that you want. And if you like children. And so I said, let me look for kids. And I put in the word kid, and I looked for images in that 10 million. It showed me all these pictures. But what was even more fascinating about it was it showed me pictures of young goats. And so, kids, as in the goats. And this technology is just amazing. And so I think, as it relates to the medical field, the field of radiology is going to completely change, where instead of a human having to read an X-ray, this technology is going to be able to read it again. And, I think my message always is we're not the experts in defense, but our ability to partner with folks like you in saying, this is the state of the art, this is the art of the possible, and this is how you can use images that were posted or videos that were posted to truly understand what's happening. The state of the art is actually quite amazing. And given this is all open standards that we have, the Photoshop file format is open standards as well. So that's a little bit of the kinds of problems that we're working on. How do you recognize an object? How do you understand the semantic meaning of it? How do you tag the object? How do you understand geopolitical, not just across imaging, but across video as well?
Thank you. Well, I'd like to move on to another subject separate from what we've been talking about in harnessing AI. I'd like to move on to building partnerships through tech bridges. Mr. Narayen, what is your vision on building tech bridges between Adobe researchers and military professionals here actually at NPS, and possibly creating opportunities for collaboration between Adobe and then our students here researching or conducting capstone projects? And essentially, how do you see us connecting our two worlds?
We've tried pretty hard to really have more and more university collaborations. And the way we do university collaborations is to really say, wherever researchers around the world, whether it's in universities or other institutions, are thinking about what are the use cases of how imaging is going to be used, or videos are going to be used, or documents are going to be used, I would say come approach us and say, here are a couple of the problems that will help us do our job better. You know, whether it's what you see underwater, whether it's understanding, images. And we partner in multiple ways. We have, ways in which we collaborate by funding university professors in different institutions. We have ways in which we partner where you come in and work with Adobe Research and say, here are two or three problems that we have, and understanding the problem domain and how we can partner. But we always have this fundamental belief that we don't have a monopoly on all the good ideas. And so I think if there are great ideas that exist, Lieutenant Hong, we'd be all ears in terms of, things that we may not even have thought of. We focus, again, as I said, a lot more on the horizontal aspects of technology, understanding how it could be used to keep our borders secure, understanding how it could be used to disseminate information appropriate, understanding how it could be used to do anomaly detection, understanding how it could be used to, one use case that I know people have used is understanding. We're very proud of this. Maybe I'll touch on that a little bit. The number of missing and exploited children that exist in this country, we had a researcher called John Penn, and John Penn decided, he was on the Photoshop team for a decade, and he said he wanted to completely dedicate his life then to social causes of how people could use Photoshop to do different things. So he came to me and he said, I'd like to, quit my job. And I'm like, don't quit your job, stay at Adobe and just do this full time. So he works 100% of his time with the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. And what he does is help them find kids. He helps them find that by, a lot of the perpetrators unfortunately post pictures. And so diagnosing those pictures, understanding what's happening, showing how kids might have aged. So I think that's another example of, we don't necessarily know what the use cases are, but we're more than willing to say, how do we partner and how do we help?
Absolutely. So if anyone in the crowd wants business cards, come find me later. So, sir, my last question until we move on to the Q&A with the students. Excuse me. Excuse me. Excuse me. Harnessing. Oh, thank you. Appreciate it. Ugh. A little nervous. My first time. So, in air, land, and sea and space environments, the DoD utilizes intelligent and integrated systems, which allows interface between the systems and what we call machine-to-machine talk. So, harnessing the data across all organizations can be daunting, and turning that data into actionable insights or actionable intelligence is an equal challenge. How have you approached this data challenge at Adobe, and what lessons might there be learned for us?
Well, the amount of data, again, that I said we process, as I said, we process 200 trillion transactions on behalf of our customers. And just to, again, paint the story, when we used to ship boxes of software, we had no idea how customers were using our products. We shipped the boxes. We hoped they were using it in the right ways. We had no idea, which features were particularly valuable to customers. And now we've instrumented all of that. And so by instrumenting the products, when people give us permission to understand, we just believe that we can build better products. However, that wasn't sufficient. What we realized was that in addition to instrumenting the products, you had to create a culture where in every meeting, having a conversation not just about the narrative of what we wanted to do, but the data associated with it was essential to understanding how data could augment our understanding of the narrative. And so we call it our data-driven operating model right now. It's actually the way we run the company. And every meeting starts with, analyzing what data it is. How many customers have used our products? Again, because we are in the software subscription business, for us, the use case is about how are people discovering our product? How are they trying it? How are they buying it? How are they using it? And how are they renewing it if they're in the subscription business? But the message that I'd like to communicate is that in addition to having this wealth of data, we had to create a process and a workflow and a way of how we ran our business meetings to appreciate the fact that it wasn't just gut and hypothesis that we needed in these discussions, but it was gut and hypothesis and assertions associated or augmented with data. And I think that's really changed, how we think about it. So when somebody says, hey, here's all the data, we tend to say, hey, no, give me the insight associated with it. And conversely, if people are only giving you their assertion, but without the data that backs them up. And so I think it's helped us really think about our customers in a very different way.
Thank you for that. Now we'll move on to question and answer. If anyone has any questions, we have a few minutes for him to answer. Please make your way down to the mics located to the left and the right, or to the stage, if anyone has questions. Feel free to walk around stage.
Hello, sir. My name is Lieutenant Commander Kellen Jones. I'm a PhD student in the meteorology department. My question is about deepfakes. I'm sure you've heard of that. What is Adobe's activity in either creating the technology to create deepfakes or identify deepfakes, and if you can comment on the danger of them? Thank you.
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And frankly, when you think about Adobe, when we talk about our mission of helping create the world's content, this whole notion of content authenticity has become a far more important issue. And I'll touch on a couple of things that we're doing in that particular space. The first is certainly the use of technology and understanding how through technology you can deterministically say what image has been changed versus not changed, and keep a log of how that image might have changed. We recently posted a blog on Adobe Research that shows how we're not just really driving innovation in that space, but how we're contributing a lot of that technology to open source. That's a necessary but not sufficient condition. And what we have to do, and we're focused a lot on this with partners, is 3 areas. The first is, when people post a piece of content, I think the most important thing is understanding the identity of the person who's posted that piece of content and having a way to, whether it's digitally sign it or certify that this is a piece of content. So determining the veracity of the individual, the identity of the individual, as well as the piece of content is really important. And so that's one thing that we're partnering in our authoring applications. You'll be able to, when you create a piece of content, to sign it and say, this has been signed by Shantanu, I certify that I created it. The second aspect in that entire workflow, when you think about deepfakes, is the publisher. And the publisher of that content, whether it's Facebook, whether it's YouTube, whether it's through email, as that piece of content is being propagated, how does the publisher of that content also step up and say, we are determining who posted that piece of content and was that changed since it was first done and it was altered? Because as you have to change things in that flow, you not just need the identity of the first person who did it, you need the ability for anybody in that chain or the publishers to also, step up and say, we're going to step up and say whether that piece of content was changed. And third, you need technology like the technology Adobe provides to say, we can uniquely tell you whether that picture, and we see this all the time. When you see a picture of somebody in a place, we can tell you whether that picture was superimposed or not. But we can't solve that problem alone, because the problem needs to be solved. If you're posting a piece of content, you have to step up and say. I think in many ways it's similar to what happened with advertisements. When somebody is placing an ad, you have to be able to say, here's the ad that I'm placing. Think of it much like, in the presidential debates, or when people are posting their election videos, that they say, this is my video and I stand by it. So I don't know if that helps answer the question. On the technology side, we can certainly share everything that we're doing as it relates to going back in time and understanding how that picture was changed, when that picture was changed. But we can't do that alone, because we have to work with the author of that piece of content and the publishers of that piece of content in order to say this is the entire workflow of that piece of content. But it's an issue that we have stepped up. We've worked a lot with Facebook and Microsoft. They announced also recently that they're thinking about it the same way. So I think we're all coming together to say, we need to step up, and we have a moral obligation and a responsibility to address that issue.
Leland McCarty from the physics department. My question is about your data-based business model that you last mentioned. And I'm curious to know, with the cloud-based system that you have now, if you could share more about the data that you get in. Is it like this percentage of Lightroom users never touch the histogram, or whatever it is? So should the user share it? And it's in the context of, we have a lot of operators on ships, sailors, operating a lot of equipment. Maybe they may never touch it. Maybe they touch it and they do the wrong thing, like you said. Could you share more about how that data comes in and how you use it?
Sure. First, I hope you're a Lightroom customer. I'm glad you talked about Lightroom. Otherwise, we have a subscription offer for any one of you who's interested. A little word from the sponsor is never, I think...
Not a sales pitch.
Again, we have two businesses. On the creative side or the document side, when people buy a piece of product from us, and I think this is another question that's front and center to us, we are completely transparent about exactly what we might collect. And we have drawn the line in the sand where we will never sell that data that we collect to anybody. So first and foremost, if you're telling us that you don't want to collect any of that data, we don't collect any of that data. So I wanted to clarify that. For the desktop products, we use that software anonymously, primarily to understand what are the use patterns. How are people using functionality? Are they accessing the functionality? Was it easy to use? Did they finish that? So that's a big part of what we are doing on the desktop pieces of software. So in Lightroom, for example, we may know how many people use blend modes, how many people do other imaging, how many people share it, and what kinds of patterns, but it's all anonymous because it's not targeted or tied back to a particular individual. But as somebody is doing something and maybe they want to, edit an image, we might pop up a dialogue with saying, hey, it appears that you're trying to do this. Can we help you through a step-by-step process associated with it? So when we capture that data anonymously, we recognize patterns. I mean, what is AI? At the end of the day, artificial intelligence is pattern matching, correct? It's things that all of us did as individuals that computers are better equipped to do and can do faster. On the enterprise side of our business, when, again, the Hyatt is using our software maybe to, help them with digitally engaging with their customers. Again, Adobe, unlike other companies, has drawn the line in the sand, and we say only that customer owns the data. And so if you're a customer who uses our technology, we give you access to all of that data, and then you can use that data, which is your first-party data, in the case of enterprises that are engaging with customers to do it. And so that's the way we think about it, which is how do we make that data actionable? Collecting data is table stakes. Nobody really cares about collecting data today. It's all about how you can get insights from it and actioning it. So it's different in different businesses, because in one business, we are the provider of the software, and so we are collecting our customers' data and keeping it secure, and being transparent about how we use it is critical. On the other side, we're collecting this data on behalf of our customers. So it's in the cloud, it's secure, but it's their data, and we don't have access to it.
Hello, sir. I'm Lieutenant Adam Weymouth, Electrical Engineering Department. My question goes back to the great power competition. I see that Microsoft and Adobe are starting to work more together, have that cooperation, be interoperable. I still see a lot of conflict between Google, Apple, Microsoft. How has the cooperation amongst great powers benefited you, or has it actually hurt you?
It's a great question, and I think it's the first time maybe that the grand powers of competition is being alluded to with 3 tech companies. But having said that, we've actually, I think the reality in business today as it relates to all of these companies, whether it's Google, whether it's Apple, whether it's Microsoft, whether it's Facebook, whether it's Amazon and Adobe, while we are smaller of them, we're still one of the largest software companies in the world, and it's a world of cooperation. So there are cases in which with Google, we partner with them very aggressively on promoting the merits of digital marketing, and we compete with them in other areas. And I think that's something that, again, all of us as companies have got very familiar with. You're going to partner with them. With Apple, we partner a lot because we want the Apple iOS operating system or the Mac operating system. We just introduced a new product earlier this week called Fresco. And what Fresco allows you to do is, instead of using, it's nuts in this day and age that people think that a mouse is a better way to draw than using a stylus. So we worked with them on a stylus. With Microsoft specifically, you're right. We have a pretty deep partnership. And I think the partnership stems from the fact that they have this cloud platform called Azure that they are trying to really get standardized. They are competing with Google Cloud Platform and Amazon in that. They wanted our applications and our platform to run on it. So we partnered a lot with them. It also happens that when you both compete with maybe another company, your enemy's enemy is your friend, and so there's an element of cooperation and a go-to-market that's happened, but it's a great partnership. And maybe sort of a little tongue-in-cheek, Satya Nadella, who's the CEO of Microsoft, and I went to the same high school, and he was my junior, so he better do what I ask him to do. That should hopefully not leave this room.
Thank you.
Hello, sir. Lieutenant Knudsen, Nurse Corps in the Manpower program. Big fan of Adobe products. I'm a Creative Suite subscriber, so thank you.
Thank you.
Actually been a user of one of the first Adobe editing systems, the Premiere. When that came out, it was really an awesome thing for institutions because it brought that price level down. But a lot of these programs require quite a bit of skill level and some aptitude that's involved with it. What is Adobe doing to make these products more intuitive and easier to use so that people are more limited by their creativity versus their skill?
That is such a great question because, again, our vision is we talk about creativity for all. And, it's my fundamental assertion that everybody has a story to tell. And our job as a company is if we can enable people who have this idea of the story that they want to tell, express themselves across any media type or across any device using any modality that they want, whether it's voice, whether it's a stylus, whether it's a computer, then we will make an impact and we will contribute to society. Our products, to your point, by definition over the years, have both got very powerful, but they have become quite complicated. And what we are really trying to do with a whole new set of products is to completely democratize access to these products to, hundreds of millions, if not billions of users. So how are we trying to do that? The first is, you talked about Premiere. We now have a product called Premiere Rush, and Premiere Rush is a completely redesigned product for the YouTube generation to be able to take something that's in their head and quickly contribute through video. We have a new product called Spark. If you go to spark.adobe.com, it is actually within 5 minutes, one can tell a story. And so we don't think it's going to be practical to take our flagship products like Photoshop and Lightroom and InDesign and Premiere, which are the absolute high-end After Effects products, and completely rethink that. Because the dilemma that we face is that the experts who who have spent decades really understanding it, the last thing that they want is to have those products not have the power that they have, or to completely change the interface. Apple actually did that with Final Cut Pro, as you're familiar with. They changed Final Cut Pro to be Final Cut X, and they lost a lot of their customers because the customers felt like this had sort of maybe become a Mickey Mouse kind of product, and Adobe was able to capitalize. So try out Spark. Try out Spark, spark.adobe.com, Lightroom on mobile. And so I think mobile represents a new opportunity for us to completely reimagine that creative process. AI allows us to do that. But our flagship products, I think we're going to continue to segment our customers and our products and saying, the higher end products, how do you keep adding incredible features? Still try to make them easier to use. But these newer generation of products, I mean, we're very, very pleased with Spark. Growing up in India, it was reading, writing, and arithmetic. I mean, digital literacy in those days was all about reading, writing, and arithmetic. Today, if you don't have access to digital technology, any student that's growing up is going to be, I think, disadvantaged for the rest of their life. So we want Spark in every single K through 12 institution around the world. A team in India just came back. They said that they've been able to standardize. We do that here in the US. The complete school districts, the complete states that are standardizing on Spark. But we tried that in India, and the team came back. They were really proud. They said, we now have 5 million people, 5 million kids having access to it. And I'm like, 5 million done, 1 billion to go. Go back to work, And so that's how we're thinking about it. We're thinking about it with respect to new products for new categories and segments. Try out all of them. And the beauty about the Creative Cloud subscription, or the way we try to think about it, is you have the whole breadth of it. And sometimes you want to do something quick and dirty and get it out. And sometimes you might want to, if there was a wedding video or something far more elaborate, you want to, spend that attention of detail. And so if we can have the spectrum of the products, hopefully we serve our customers across that spectrum well.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you for bringing that up. I'm glad that you said that you put your customers first, and then bringing up the fact that we have to think about our children, who are the future of tomorrow. It actually reminds me of one of my classmates, Chris Tidwell, in our defense analysis program. When we talk about centers of gravity, especially in the military, we definitely think, it comes down to the will of the people, and that's who we should put first and foremost. Is there any more questions? We have a couple minutes if there's one. Make it fast.
Thank you.
Really fast.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sir, you mentioned the will of the people is the most important forefront in your mind, but sometimes the will of the people is actually hate speech. So your Facebook counterparts and YouTube have been hit with hate speech and programs that they have been trying to do to mitigate hate speech from Congress and other organizations. What are you doing to, and not necessarily hate speech, but hate video, hate imagery that is designed to elicit a response against ethnic or minority groups, whether it's in this country or in Asia and around the world? How do you feel that what is your moral obligation and your responsibility to combat that type of imagery and that video? And do you have someone in your company right now that is doing something about it?
The short answer to that is absolutely. In fact, we have a complete content curation group, and the content curation group is constantly looking to try and see, what pieces of hateful speech or hateful videos are being created, and do our bit to bring it down. It is one of those complicated issues, but as a company, our greatest asset is our people. And we've been incredibly fortunate in that some of the other companies that you mentioned, we haven't been tainted with that. We have a great ethical reputation, but we have to do our bit. I mean, the moral obligation for tech companies who play a leadership role is, how do we represent the values that we have, both internally and externally? And I will say it's different. In the last year that I've been CEO, there have been more questions, frankly, asked of me not just about the company's strategy and what we stand for and customers, but to speak up on other matters that impact employees. And so we have a structure that we've created which relates to how does this impact our customers, how does this impact our employees, does it impact the majority of them? And then we speak up, and we speak up politically. We have, for example, on the immigration thing, we have spoken up on moral equality. We were the first company that talks about not just pay parity, but opportunity parity. And so we take that social responsibility a lot serious. But we live in uncertain times, and the kinds of questions that we're being asked, we recognize that we have to be diligent about it, and it's a work in progress. And we will make some mistakes sometime. But thus far, I think we've managed to skirt from any social issue where we have done wrong, because I think the moral compass of the company. The last thing I might say is, people used to talk a lot about the tone from the top. Increasingly, it's so much more important in terms of the mood in the middle and what's happening at the base. And I think when you have that kind of an employee base that is not going to put up with it, we feel really fortunate.
Thank you, Christina, for the last question. Mr. Narayen, as we wrap up our moderation, on behalf of Admiral Rondo and the Naval Postgraduate School, I want to thank you for taking the time to coming and visiting us and inspiring our military's future leader. And I have a Naval Postgraduate Challenge coin to present to you on your way out. Thank you, and please give Mr. Narayen a round of applause.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you.
Last comments.
As I said at the beginning again, it's incredibly impressive what you do, and it was an honor and privilege to be here. Thank you for having me.